Today's Q&A is with Christopher Brown, CEO and Director of HeliosX. Given that you came from the oil and gas sector, do you find there's much overlap between lithium brine extraction and oil and gas?
I think that's going to be a fantastic opportunity for engineers in the oil and gas industry to transition their skill set over to the lithium brine. My background personally, I'm a chemical engineer by education, did reservoir engineering for about 10 years with a focus on subsurface analysis. So lithium brine falls perfectly in terms of understanding subsurface fluid flow dynamics and be able to pull things to the surface and operate them effectively for extraction purposes. I did another 10 years of work internationally, focusing on identification of subsurface opportunities and infrastructure projects globally for investment by large-scale institutions to invest in emerging plays around the world. And so bringing that skill set back to Canada and looking for opportunities both here in Argentina and Nevada, I think there's going to be lots of opportunities for energy geologists as well as engineers to migrate their skill set to the lithium brine industry in the future.
Can you touch on some of the previous exploration results across HeliosX's assets?
It's been pretty exciting to identify assets not only in Canada, US, and Argentina, but globally. There's going to be emerging opportunities for lithium brine as we investigate not just in this domain, but others. But specifically, what drew our attention to the Canadian basin is that we have excessive data on lithium water samples that give us direction or indicative opportunities in Canada. So directly around our asset base, we were focused on reef development. Reefs, to give you an idea, historically were these limestone opportunities that were like the Australian offshore reefs that were buried after 100 million years. And what happened is a dolomitization process where hot water was brought into these reefs to essentially create permeability, where it brought up both calcium, magnesium, and lithium, which now fill these large reefs across Alberta Basin and into Saskatchewan with lithium opportunities. So from an exploration perspectivity, we have a lot of the indications of lithium present in these reefs right across the basin. In Nevada, we have surface sampling throughout our basins with definitive indications that lithium has migrated and it's present in those basins and on our property specifically. And then in Argentina, we have both surface sampling and some shallow well opportunities that have identified lithium resource, as well as the analogies in close proximity to our asset, where there's 43101 reports, which have defined significant higher lithium concentrations that are easily within the commercial realm.
What are the next steps for each lithium project?
The next steps for our lithium projects going forward for HeliosX are fairly exciting. We have a drill location where we're mobilizing a rig in Nevada right now. Very excited to see how the outcome of that in the coming months. We're partnered with Lilac Solutions in Nevada. They're a world expert at direct lithium extraction techniques, but have chosen to get more involved with exploration activities globally. Fantastic partner to have, highly technical. We get along fantastic. In Alberta, our next steps in that project are continue the resource development and resource assessment. In Alberta, there is a punitive nature of owning large amount of land in terms of what it costs to maintain. We want to be very focused in our opportunities on Alberta, so we're conducting a large-scale resource assessment across all of the basins to identify and optimize locations there for potential drill locations next year, as well as we're working closely with the University of Calgary. We are in the process of doing detailed engineering design for a potential pilot facility with specific parameters that we'd like to mobilize on site in the coming year as well. In Argentina, we're taking steps right now to do sampling throughout our basin. We already know that lithium is present, but what we don't have a firm grasp on is the size of the prize in Argentina. So we're going to continue with surface sampling, some geophysical reinterpretation work, and we've initiated the process of gathering environmental data. The importance of that is to both combine that information for environmental assessment reports for the government, but to work side by side with the indigenous in Argentina to make sure that there's a win-win situation with our operations in Argentina.
Have you done any internal economic modeling that might provide an indication of the company's potential value proposition?
Yeah, so the internal economic modeling that we've developed definitely lends itself to commercial opportunities throughout all three of our basins. We do not approach a basin or look for exploration opportunities until we do the full cycle economics internally to determine the viability of that basin. For example, we don't want to get into a basin that's going to cost us billions of dollars for capital. Being a junior company, we want to make sure that we can share in the upside with that with our shareholders. And so economic analysis, for example, in Argentina, if you look at it from a high level, we did a 5,000 TPA, 10,000 TPA, 20,000 tons per annum type of modeling, which had indications of unlocking on the lower end, 500 to $900 million of value on a gross basis, and we're 49% of that asset, to upwards on a 20,000 TPA scenario that could value the asset between 1.7 to $2.7 billion. And both of those are well within capital means that we'd be able to access resources to fund those programs. In Nevada, you're dealing with smaller set of reservoirs. And so in those cases, we'd be modeling something between 1,000 to 5,000 TPA type of modeling for facilities there. And in Canada, it's very much more exciting. We can mobilize very effectively in Canada for economic opportunities. The issue we have in Canada is the lower lithium concentration in the reservoirs. And so that's why we're working with the University of Calgary to determine methodologies to optimize that on an economic basis. But there we would focus on, again, 5,000 TPA size facilities to 10,000 TPA size facilities to start with eye on the prize to try and grow that significantly as we get a better understanding of the resource.
What is meant by the window of commercialization and line of sight in Argentina?
So when we looked at Argentina, it's important to understand how to commercialize a foreign jurisdiction. In that, you need access to infrastructure, and that infrastructure in Argentina is invaluable when we're assessing whether or not we make an entry in Argentina. So other companies have taken up salars in Argentina for prospective exploration opportunities, but for us, understanding the window of commercialization is so important. That's identified in any country you do business in. And understanding how to commercialize your asset effectively is so important. So in Argentina specifically, access to a natural gas source for energy to provide to your facility is invaluable. And for us, our asset lies on one of only two natural gas pipelines that cross between Argentina and Chile to access significant natural gas for powering the facilities as we move towards commercialization. To give you an idea of the significance of that, is when you look at the offsetting producers who have commercial operations immediately offsetting our asset base, they're 40,000 ton per annum facilities each. Each of them draws at least 1.5 BCF of gas a year to power their facilities. The concept of solar to replace that energy consumption actually creates a larger footprint than the evaporation ponds today. And so from our perspective, we'd love to do more renewable type of activities for powering the facilities, but unfortunately, the solar footprint would compound the issue in Argentina of environmental footprint issues that the environmental groups are concerned about when they're undertaking operations. So the key thing for us is being in close proximity to those pipelines. It led us to accelerated commerciality as we take the steps forward with the indigenous communities and the government of Argentina.
Why is line of sight so important to commercialization and scale?
So from a HeliosX perspective, when we're looking at various jurisdictions, having a line of sight on commercialization is invaluable. You have to be able to look and see how you can achieve commerciality in each jurisdiction and not just accumulate a set of assets just for promotional purposes. This is what a number of companies have fallen victim to, for example, in the Alberta Basin. If you were to collect millions of acres of lithium brine rights throughout the basin, a great question to ask entities is how much is that going to cost to hold that acreage? In Alberta, you have 2 years to start developing it and investing in exploration, and you have to spend at least $5 per hectare on these acreages in order to keep them after even a 2-year point. So even though you're guaranteed a certain tenure of operations on those leases, if you haven't invested to those levels, the Alberta government's going to take back those leases. And so we try and make sure that we have a very focused investment approach in Alberta. As an example, we're not aspiring to acquire millions and millions of acres, because after 2 years, 2 million hectares of lithium brine rights in Alberta is going to run you close to $10 million to maintain, just to keep them after the 2 years. And a lot of junior companies don't have the balance sheet to maintain that. So in Alberta, we'll keep a very focused asset base. It'll be dynamic. We'll migrate to areas where we think we have higher prospectivity. And so even if this particular asset base isn't the one we have in 2 years, shareholders can rest assured that we're focusing on areas to prioritize and commercialize. And that's our priority going forward. And then in Nevada and Argentina, it's the same line of sight. We've selected Argentina assets specifically because of the ability to commercialize effectively, being in close proximity to roads, being in close proximity to natural gas for feedstock for energy. Again, these are check boxes that are minimum requirements to actually focus on commercial operations in these jurisdictions.
What is DLE and how does it differ from traditional evaporation brines?
So the key aspect of DLE versus evaporation ponds has been an emerging discussion both in Argentina, US, and Canada in terms of optimizing and refining your lithium to a concentration that can be converted effectively to lithium carbonate, for example. And so the issues historically have been evaporation ponds have been the cheapest and easiest process for evaporating and concentrating your lithium so that it can be processed effectively. The issue you have with evaporation ponds is that it leaves a large footprint on the surface. And with environmental concerns only growing in all these jurisdictions, they're less likely to be used and approved going forward. And this is the emergence of DLE, which is direct lithium extraction. This process effectively greatly reduces your footprint, that your environmental footprint that we're all concerned about and want to manage, but still effectively extracts and concentrates the lithium brine into a higher concentration so that it can be produced. There are many DLEs out there. There's not a one size fits all for DLE processes. So that when we're looking at direct lithium extraction, it's important to select the right direct lithium extraction to the brine that you're producing.
Why have you partnered with different DLE providers for each of HeliosX's assets?
So HeliosX, in its endeavors to commercialize each of its various jurisdictions, has partnered with a variety of DLE providers. The aspect there is that each one provides a unique technical aspect to the resource we're pursuing, and it's important to identify and maximize our recovery and our economics for choosing the DLE provider that can most effectively work with the brines we deal with. There is, like I mentioned before, no specific direct lithium extraction technique that's going to be universally applicable. Everything has to be customized, but it's also important to partner with those that have the research capabilities to continue to evolve the technology. We tend to avoid working with junior DLE providers simply by the fact that they may or may not be around a year or two from now. We're looking for 10, 20-year projects. We need to ensure the companies we partner with will be present for longer term, as well as reinvestment in research. It costs tens of millions of dollars to effectively continue the research for DLE and move it and advance it effectively in the coming years. And we need to partner with those that are willing to invest in the research to continue to evolve the technology. That being said, our partners that we're looking at or have currently in engagements with are Coke Solutions, Coke Separations in Argentina. They're currently evaluating for us a use of our brine in effectively a DLE process in Argentina that would process about 1,000 or produce about 1,000 tons per annum type of approach. In Nevada, we're partnered with Lilac Solutions, probably one of the most worldly known entities that's been aggressively pursuing direct lithium extraction technologies. They're backed by groups such as MIT. Bill Gates is an investor, and they have amazing resources at hand and developed a fantastic system for direct lithium extraction. It's been fairly US focused, but they are looking at expanding into various other jurisdictions, such as Argentina as well. And they are a great company to work alongside with. In Canada, we found that there was a unique proposition for working with the University of Calgary. There, we're working on the development of brines that are customized to the Canadian basin and understanding extraction techniques specifically for those types of brines. And so that, again, has been very well supported, and we're working towards detailed engineering design of a facility currently alongside the University of Calgary's participation, and we look forward to some results in that in the coming year or two.
What is HeliosX doing to build trust with its community to ensure a license to operate?
So HeliosX takes a lot of initiatives to work with the local communities. We have a very strong historical track record as a management team with working with Indigenous. We've met with success, for example, in the oil sands, where we partnered with the local Indigenous nations to effectively improve their economics and give them transparency in emerging operations in remote communities. And so we bring that to the table and we look to work with local, regional, Indigenous in each of our areas of operations. An example would be in our Fox Creek region at Alexander First Nation has operations where we can utilize some truck services as we move that project forward. And we look forward to working with our local communities as best as possible, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous. So if there's local towns in the region, we reach out to them first for priority services to see what aspects they can provide to help us with our operations. In Argentina, it's important to keep the engagement going. We've already have confirmation, for example, of approvals from a number of nations for us to work and operate and do surface sampling in the regions that we're currently doing operations under, but we're currently undergoing a reaffirmation. COVID has set everyone back for a couple of years, and we just want to ensure that the Indigenous are taken care of and have an understanding of what we're undertaking in Argentina. So we're actually taking steps today to go and revisit each of the Indigenous communities in our jurisdiction in Argentina, just to reaffirm and give them confidence that we're going to continue the communications, open dialogue, and as things move forward towards commercializations, we'd hope to utilize their services and assistance, and wherever there's an opportunity for engagement or employment, we're going to provide those opportunities to the regional Indigenous.
What makes each jurisdiction the company operates in attractive?
So Helios has taken a portfolio approach to development and exploration of lithium across a broad range of jurisdictions. It's a methodology that we've learned over the years just from personal experience to hedge your bets on a portfolio management basis. Each jurisdiction has plus and minuses in terms of operating, and we've chosen to operate currently in Canada, US, and Argentina. The Argentine asset has phenomenal high concentrations that are easily commercial, but our issues there are going to be working with the local Indigenous and partnering and working with the local government. In Nevada, we have a smaller prize. Each of the reservoirs may be, we're not going to see a 40,000 ton per annum facility in Nevada, but that being said, the jurisdiction there is a little bit more easier to work with as long as we continue the negotiations and effectively secure necessary freshwater rights in each of our play types, which we have in one of our plays already. And then in Canada, a phenomenal jurisdiction to work in. They have oil and gas expertise, which means they've set the regulatory framework for facility developments and reservoir development. This is huge in terms of being able to execute effectively in Canada. The downside in Canada is obviously a lower concentration, but the upside is it's a much larger container than we'd ever see in the US. And so the balance between a larger volume with a smaller concentration hopefully nets us out the same type of opportunities that we're identifying in Argentina. Now, from a portfolio risk management, because I've spent a lot of time internationally advising global institutions to invest in various jurisdictions, even if we were 50% successful in each of our jurisdictions, because we have 3 jurisdictions that we're operating in, that 50% probability in each jurisdiction lends itself to an amazingly high probability of success in any one given jurisdiction. And so statistically, our chance of success runs close to 80% if every jurisdiction had a 50% chance of success. So we work on it from a portfolio approach to ensure we can achieve the maximum return for shareholders that are involved with the investment in HeliosX.